Well, hello there. It's time for our weekly Bible story lesson, and I am really glad that you're here with me. It is the fourth Sunday of Advent. That means that Christmas is right around the corner. Remember, there's 4 weeks where we count down to Christmas, where we prepare ourselves to get ready for Jesus coming, both as a little baby, that we remember that he's coming to set us free, and we remember Mary's faith and Joseph's faith. We remember how God set up the whole world to make this thing happen and make it all work out. But we also remember how Jesus is going to come again. That's what we do in Advent. And each week we light one of those candles. Each week we remember that Jesus coming is getting a little bit closer. And each week we do this game in our head and in our hearts where we're thinking about Christmas, but we're also thinking about the last days when Jesus will come and make everything new. So it's closer today than it was the last time we met. And you and I, we have the opportunity to grow in giving and in loving and in helping and in doing all of the things that Jesus wants us to do. One of the things Jesus wants us to do is to learn these stories so that we can recognize who God is and what God has done, and that when God works in our world now, we'll say, oh, that's just like what God did back then. So we're going to We're going to keep going with the stories that we've been telling. And remember, the last time we got together, we talked about how God had brought Israel out into the wilderness, right? Rescued them from their slavery, taken them through the Red Sea, and then they got thirsty. And God had provided water for them in the wilderness. And when we left the story, the people had camped out at a place called Elim, where there were 12 springs and palm trees, and they were very happy, and their animals were very happy. But it wasn't God's plan that they stay there. God wanted to bring them back to Canaan. God wanted to bring them back to the land of promise. And remember, before they went there, they had to stop at Mount Sinai, the mountain where God had spoken to Moses from the burning bush, the place where God intended to give them the law and tell them who they were supposed to be and how they were supposed to live. So they left Elim and they headed back out down the road towards Sinai. And they got hungry. And they started to forget all of the things that God had done for them, and they started to complain. And they complained and complained and complained against Moses and against Aaron, and they said kind of dumb things like, we should have never left Egypt. It was much better in Egypt. In Egypt, at least, we had all the meat we wanted to eat, and bread. We could eat all the bread we wanted. They totally forgot about being slaves. They totally forgot about being whipped. They totally forgot that Pharaoh had ordered all of the little boys to be killed. You remember that. I remember that. Moses remembered that. Aaron remembered that. Of course, God remembers it always. But the people were hungry and they were crabby and they complained. And Moses and Aaron said to them, what's wrong with you? We didn't do this. When you complain to us, you're complaining against God. God brought you out in the wilderness, and God's going to take care of you. And God said to Moses, right, when they're complaining against you, they're really complaining against me, but I want to teach them about me. I want to show them that I am going to give them everything they need, that I'm going to give them every possible blessing. So you call them together and you let them know that tonight they're going to get meat and tomorrow they're going to get bread. So Moses obeyed God and told the people, and they didn't believe it. They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're in the middle of the wilderness, and they're crabby and they're hungry and they're mad and they're frustrated. And then quail started to fly into the camp. You know what quail are? Game birds. Beautiful to eat. And they just sat there while the people grabbed them, picked them right up, and started to prepare them so they could eat. And they filled themselves with meat that night. They ate and ate and ate and ate until they couldn't eat anymore. But God wasn't done blessing them yet. The next morning, when they went out, there was kind of a dew on the ground. And as the dew dried, as it evaporated, it left these little white flakes on the ground that you could eat. And the people picked them up and they tasted them and they said, "What's this? What's this?" And in their language, that's sort of like manna. It's manu, right? But over time, what's this? What is this? They started calling these little pieces of bread manna. And they would pick them up and they eat them and they tasted like wafers with honey on them. They were really good. And the people were so surprised and they said to Moses, "What's going on?" And Moses said, "God told you he was going to give you bread." Now, there's some rules. Every morning, you should go out and collect manna. Collect what you need for the day. Don't collect more. It won't keep, and you'll be sorry. Also, if you sleep in and don't collect any in the morning, it's too late. There won't be any food for you to eat that day. So you got to get up early, you got to go out, you got to collect manna, you need enough for the day, and then that's it. Oh, one more thing. You know how God created the world in 6 days and then the seventh day he rested? God's going to start having us do that too. He's going to have us start keeping Sabbath and resting on the seventh day. So here's the deal. On the sixth day, God's going to send extra manna. You can collect 2 helpings of manna, 2 shares of manna, the manna that you're going to need for 2 days, because there's not going to be any manna on the seventh day. Doesn't matter how early you go out, it's not going to be there, and it won't spoil. It'll still be good. It's the only day that it won't spoil. It's the only day that it'll still be good. And the people sort of listened and sort of didn't, but they still had happy tummies from the meat last night, from the quail last night, and the manna tasted so good they were just shoveling it in. And I'm sure Moses and Aaron and the good Lord sighed that some of these people are going to get it wrong. And they did. There were some people who thought, "I'm not getting up every day. I'm just going to collect a whole week's worth at one time, and I'm going to sleep in every day." Their manna got filled with worms, and it smelled terrible, and they couldn't eat it. There were other people who said, "What does Moses know about manna? I'm going to sleep in tomorrow. I'll get up and get manna when I wake up." By the time they got up, there was no manna. And there were some people on the sixth day who didn't collect a double share for the Sabbath day. And they got to be good and hungry because no manna fell on the Sabbath day. But over time, people learned. Over time, they got the rules down. Over time, they learned to obey God and to trust God. And every day they went out and they collected manna and they had all the food they needed for that day. And if they tried to save it, it went bad. If they didn't get up early enough, they didn't eat. And on the sixth day, if they didn't collect double, they were hungry on the Sabbath. God wants us to learn to obey. God wants us to learn to trust. And that's not just for the people of Israel out in the wilderness, that's for me. That's for you. God has rules for us. How we should live. How we should treat one another. What we should do with our lives and our time. And as we obey God, things go well, and we prosper, and we grow. And as we disobey, well, there's punishments. So you and I this time, we're remembering how God took care of his people in the wilderness. And what you might not know is that God kept the manna coming 6 days a week for the entire time that Israel was in the wilderness, more than 40 years. And when they crossed into the promised land, it never came again. God had a plan for his people, and God has a plan for you. I cannot wait to see you again next week. Next time we see each other and pick up this story, we'll have had Christmas. I hope you have a lovely Christmas. I hope that your friends and your family that you're able to gather with are a blessing to you and that you're a blessing to them. I hope that you learn generosity and peace. I hope that you grow in love. And I can't wait to see you after Christmas. Be well, my little friends. Bye-bye.